It's so great to see a packed room here. So easy to find, you know. Thank you for thinking of us, Trescon. Anyway, in all seriousness, I think this is going to be a fun discussion, much more interesting than the stuff which is being discussed in the plenary rooms right now, because we're not going to have any filters. We're going to get dirty. We're going to talk the truth here, okay? We're not scared to say what we actually think, guys, are we? Right? Okay, fine. These guys are shitting themselves, by the way. Okay, so basically, we're going to talk about Fintech success stories, challenges in the GCC. You know, the Fintech space is the biggest sector in the startup space in the GCC. Actually, bigger than the next three sectors combined, being food, healthcare, and transport. But despite the fact that Fintech is so big, it's actually experienced a few challenges over the last few years. In year to year, Fintech funding has dropped by 80% in this region, right? Which is actually bigger than the MENA funding reduction of 60%. So even though the sector is big and all the smart money goes into it, it is facing a number of challenges. And so really the purpose of today's discussion is to understand from Fintech founders who operate in this space, what are the challenges? You know, what are the success stories? What are the lessons learned? And what can you guys in the audience, being bankers or Fintech founders or regulators yourselves, learn from this? And with me, I have 4 exceptional founders operating across the Fintech spectrum. We have, to my immediate left, Craig. He's basically in the SME peer-to-peer lending space. We have Ola, who's a Bitcoin OG. She founded the first crypto exchange in the region. Crypto is my actual pet subject, so I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say. We have Mirna, who is in the open banking space. Actually set up the first open banking. Guys, come in, don't be scared, man. Please join us. Have a seat, there's plenty of room at the front. Don't be shy. And last but not least, we have Tariq, who actually comes from Africa and has moved to the Middle East a few years ago to set up a buy now, pay later company. So pretty good representation from across the space. Guys, let's just jump into it. First of all, I'd like you to tell us, very briefly, just introduce your company and tell us exactly what problem you are solving. Tariq, you go first.
Thanks. So, Tariq Sheikh. We're solving access to finance, essentially. And obviously, you know, it's a space, financial services is a space that's been overserved in many ways, but at the same time, massively underserved. So what we do is we partner with merchants and with banks to enable financial services at the time when customer needs access to finance. We started off with shorter term installments, which were funded by ourselves on our book, and we've now evolved into something much bigger than that. So more meaningful, away from the wants, and more towards the needs of customers.
Okay, so basically, if you want to buy something but you can't afford to buy it, you go to postpay.
Correct.
Right? Okay, cool. Mirna, what about you? Tell us, what problem is your company solving?
So hi, good morning, everyone. We are trying to move the needle on financial inclusion, and we believe that everybody has the right to have access to financial services, being a customer, a retail customer, or an SME. And we believe that any company can become a fintech company if we embed financial services into their suite of products and services. And there's no fun in open banking. We just do it because we have to do it.
Thank you. Ola, okay, now tell us, you founded the first crypto exchange in the region. What problem are you trying to solve?
First of all, glad to be here with everyone. Thanks, Anish. So we started Bit Oasis in 2016. That's when we launched. We were the first platform to serve the UAE market and the Middle East or MENA market in general. And what we started with is still our core mission today, which is making it easy, safe, and secure to buy, sell, and use crypto. And now more acting as a gateway to Web3. Obviously, the space has developed and significantly progressed since we started. But the core issue still becomes how can you onboard, the next millions and tens of millions of customers across the region to crypto in a safe and regulated way.
Fantastic. Guys at the back, please come in. You don't need to stand. You can have a seat. Be comfortable. Craig, go for it. Tell us what problem you're solving. I guess it's pretty obvious, SME lending, but talk to us about why.
Sure. So good morning, everybody. So Beehive will be celebrating our 10th year at the end of this year. And fundamentally, what we do is we help SMEs access finance. Looking at the markets, a lot of times people say, look, there's a lot of banks, these businesses that can't get access to banks, can't get access to bank finance. The main challenge for SMEs is that a lot of the banks don't really have an appetite to lend to the SME space. Right? They like the liability side of banking, but they don't really like the asset side. So what we do is we help businesses get access to fast, accessible finance, same kind of rates as the banks. But what we're trying to do is just reduce that time to finance, which is typically very, very important for the SMEs. So we're in the UAE. We partner with Saudi, no doubt we'll talk about this a bit more, but we are either a standalone operator or we partner with banks to be effectively their SME lending department.
Fabulous, got it. Okay, so guys, I've founded a company myself and ran it for 7 years, so I know that running a startup is an absolute nightmare. Yeah, it's hell, let's be honest. I'd like each of you to tell me, what is your biggest challenge that you faced? And I know this is hard because there are so many, but I'd like you to focus on the biggest challenge that you faced in the last few years. Mona, I'd like to start with you.
Coping with regulations is a challenge, especially in the fintech space where it's super highly regulated. Finding talent is another challenge as well that we face. To be honest, as a founder, you all know Fadi Ghandour, right? He once told me there's no glory in being a founder. And I found it very weird because for somebody who's glorified in the market, it was very weird. But then actually, when you go through the journey, you find that whenever you hit the peak of a mountain, you realize that it's only the beginning of another mountain. And you don't really celebrate success. The market celebrates success. You don't celebrate it. You just think, what's next and how can I protect what I've achieved? And the emotional roller coaster is just incredible. And for us women, I don't know about you, Ola, but for me, managing family and work and all of that is a lot of work. And mingling with investors in their majlises as a woman, that's another challenge on its own.
You know what, guys? How many of you are founders in the audience? Anyone a founder? Respect, man. Anyone a female founder here? I just want to give a round of applause to the female founders, guys. Because they have to deal with so much shit. You got to respect, man, respect. But basically, you said finance, regulatory, and talent. Ola, what about you? What do you think are the one or two biggest challenges for your company?
I think there are similarities across different fintech companies because obviously we're all operating in fintech here. As a crypto company, I think one or two of our main challenges were, as operators, as builders, we always move much faster than the regulation or the regulators, which is in many industries, it is the case. But I think it was way more obvious or way more significant in our case because the crypto and Web3 space is moving at lightning speed. We found it very challenging balancing, I would say, regulation and growth or expansion across the markets. I think there are sort of also unique cases to the region versus other parts of the world. I think the MENA region is quite significant as a market opportunity. However, it's highly fragmented, where you need the license, and in our case, obviously, we need also banking partners for on-ramps and off-ramps, and given with the vertical that we're in. And that wasn't really readily available as the market existed. So there's that sort of disconnect, I think, between innovators and people who are trying to build in the space and move quickly and aggressively, acquire market share, and how quickly regulators would move. Particularly, I would say in the GCC where it's the biggest market opportunity. Obviously, the UAE has done strides when it comes to that. I think we've seen most of that in the last 18 months or so. Although obviously AGGM had regulatory frameworks before, but VARA, I think, introduced new types of activities that sort of support our vertical. Obviously, Bahrain has been a pioneer. However, Bahrain is a smaller jurisdiction compared to the wider market opportunity in the region. So I think that disconnect between builders and innovators and the regulators still exists. You know, Saudi is the biggest market when it comes to crypto, but there's still no regulation or clarity around regulation. You know, you can probably operate through a like cross-border basis for quite some time, but if you really want to win a market, you need the support of the regulator. So that was a challenge. I would say it remains a challenge, and I think it's really an invitation to regulators to engage in talks to help build the industry.
Interesting. So you're talking about the tension between innovation and regulation, and also the fragmentation of the GCC, which makes it difficult to kind of do things at scale here. Anyone in the audience work at a regulator? Don't feel shy. No one's going to hurt you or anything. Just be honest. Safe space here. Any regulators here? Yes? No? Okay, fine. Which regulator are you with? DFSA. Okay, respect. Okay, good. We have a regulator listening to you. What role is what's your role at DFSA? Amazing. Okay, cool. So listen, please, very carefully, because you need to help these guys out. Yeah. Cool. So now, let's go to Tariq. Tell us some of the challenges that you've faced.
I mean, the challenges tend to evolve from, if I think back 5 years ago, the types of challenges that we were faced with then versus now have evolved a little bit. But again, I don't want to belabor the point, but regulation has really been one of those things that's been a constant challenge. When we look at the regulation in the region, you're looking at a market that's possibly, 10 times, I mean, the US is about 10 times the size. You've got other massive markets around the world. Single licensed regions like the EU. Competing for investment, I think that was the first sort of phase. How do you raise investment for a region where you have smaller, albeit smaller markets, which are each regulated in their own way? And on top of that, I think 5 years ago, in the 5 years that we've existed, the regulation has sort of been born with us. So on one hand, it's an opportunity to really write the book or write the story as you walk it, which has been really useful. So I think that's a very positive side. But the challenging side is that it's almost blindsided. You never really know what you're going to be faced with until it comes out. And there's always that delta.
Right. So regulation. I can see a pattern emerging here, yeah? Now, Craig, let me ask. So Craig, Beehive actually was acquired by eAnd last year. So he's exited. Respect. Everyone a round of applause, man. I mean, startups exiting, it's like what, 1%, 2%, 3% of startups that exit. So you've been successful. Congratulations. Tell me,
thank you.
Up until the acquisition, because we'll talk post-acquisition later, what were your key challenges in kind of setting up and scaling all to the point that you exited?
Yeah, so I think echoing what the rest of the panel said, regulation is always a challenge. And a lot of times it's a challenge because, as Tariq was mentioning earlier, when you look at some of the other markets, it's the amount of money you spend and the amount of management time that is spent in that as well. So it becomes a real friction point. But also when you're trying to build trust in a market, being regulated is incredibly important. Regulators understanding your business model is very important. So I think enough's been said about regulation, but regulation is obviously a challenging point. Talent, right? Talent was really tough to get in the region, right? Not just tough, but the price point, right? If I compared that to, say, the UK market or the European market, it'd be 50, 75% more for somebody that sometimes wasn't even as skilled. So that would be really frustrating because, again, that goes back to scaling. You can't scale the business because one of the most important things as an entrepreneur, I guess, as men have talked about, is that it's a hard slog and you need a really good team around you. So I think what you tend to find is the companies that have built a real strong core team that understand they've got to get in the trenches, they've got to roll the sleeves up, and really, really work, makes the difference. And then you need to, grow your team with the right kind of skill sets and probably more importantly, the right attitude. Because, we've had quite a few people that have come in as junior positions with us, and they now hold very senior positions with us because they were willing to embrace the culture, the kind of mission. And it's really, it's gratifying to see when you see people coming in their early 20s and now they're in the late 20s and they're running whole departments. So I think talent, it's getting better, but that was always a challenge. And then I think the third thing is, people talk about entrepreneurial journeys. It's good that you don't know what you're about to go through, because I think most people, if you knew what you were going through, you wouldn't set your company up. Right? You almost have to get to that mountain to see the next mountain, because if you looked, there's 10 mountains I've got to get up, you just wouldn't start.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think someone asked Elon Musk, what would you do to encourage someone to do an entrepreneurship, and he said nothing. I wouldn't encourage them at all. You know what I mean? Interesting. So, okay, we're going to talk a bit more about regulation later, but I want to talk a bit about successes, because I don't want to be completely bleak and negative here. Let's start with you, Craig. Tell me about your biggest success, which I'm sure is the acquisition, unless there's something that's bigger. But what's been your main success?
Obviously, the acquisition, definitely. I think one of the other areas that was a huge success for us in adversity was coming out of COVID. Lending business, going into COVID, lending is all about confidence. So as soon as COVID hit, that was, an absolute kind of binary thing. We were either going to survive it or we weren't, because we make money when our investors are lending over the platform. If the investors stop lending, it doesn't matter how many businesses you've got wanting to take finance. So I think coming out of COVID, we came out leaner, meaner. Unusual for a lot of fintechs, we started to focus really on profitability rather than on scale. And I think what that did do is give us a platform that when we then started the discussions with E&, they could see what we'd been through. They could also see that we were a profitable organization. We were very, very focused on what we were trying to achieve. And yeah, that's, I think it's a kind of huge feather in our cap that we had somebody like E&, to come along.
Amazing.
And we could see the synergies.
Yeah.
So they've got huge potential for origination for us. And they're not really doing what we do in any space. So there was a lot of identifiable synergies. It's still incumbent on us to deliver those.
Tell us briefly, post-acquisition, what has it been like to work with Ian? And tell us the truth.
Well,
very briefly.
Whenever you work with a corporate, you will inevitably get pulled into the kind of corporate reporting lines. So the real key, I think, as a founder and an entrepreneur, is trying to keep the corporate out of your day-to-day as much as possible, whilst identifying opportunities how you can actually kind of execute on the synergies in their business. Because when all's said and done, when a large organization buys a relatively small organization, it's incumbent on the small organization to find out how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. Ola, I want to go to you now. Respect, you founded the first crypto exchange. Now Dubai is full of crypto exchanges, right? Super competitive. So tell us about your successes. What do you think has been your biggest, you point to it and say, yes, we smashed it, we did that?
I think there are several over the last
Give me one.
6 or 7 years. The most notable one, I would say, is how we've executed on private-public partnerships as Bitoasis. We were the first to market before even regulation was in place. We've seen the market opportunity, obviously, in the UAE across the region. And we were able to build private-public partnerships with the UAE Financial Unit, FIU. We were the first reporting entity back in 2021 to the Central Bank of UAE, or FIU. That helped us really build trust in the market, be the first platform to also secure banking partnerships. And obviously we've had different partnerships with law enforcement agencies, Dubai Police, the UAE Executive Office for AML.
For money laundering purposes.
Yeah, and we were also part
really
of the
good at
FATF
that in Dubai,
audits.
Right?
So we've, from a training perspective as well, we've extended our know-how, our knowledge, where we've also worked with different law enforcement agencies to share that knowledge. And then obviously once Vara existed, we've had the legacy business approval, and then later on the operational MVP, and now we're operating and licensed under Vara as well. So I think that really helped us at the beginning build that high level of trust as a crypto player and build a very strong brand in the market. And today with, there's obviously a bunch of companies that are getting regulated, licensed. Some of them sort of, compete with us on our market segments. Others are looking at other sort of, verticals because the market has diversified. But when it comes to retail customers, your first platform to buy your crypto, that ease of use and trust, we are still the biggest in the market, and I think from an AED crypto volume perspective, we've got the highest market share amongst regulated players in the UAE market. So I think that's testament to the strong product and the brand that we've built.
Fantastic. And very quickly, what's your Bitcoin price prediction for the end of the year?
No investment advice.
Obviously, not financial advice, but tell us, because you're an OG, what do you think?
I don't typically do price predictions, on panels. But
you make an exception today, right?
You could do your own extrapolation, but fundamentally, I believe Bitcoin is here to stay, and it really grew into an alternative asset class with all the institutional uptick that is happening. Bitcoin ETFs, obviously, it's all sort of upwards from here.
Yeah.
I know you're a bit disappointed that I didn't give a price prediction.
No, it's fine. It's all right. You guys could use your imagination. Myrna, tell us your biggest success.
Success is very personal, and every entrepreneur would define success in a different way. It all goes back to why you set up the company in the beginning. If you had set up, like for example, we raised $8 million over the past 2 years when funding was really, really dry. We also got licensed by 2 regulators when it's very difficult. And we're planning another 2 licenses. I can name so many things, but honestly speaking, this is not success, how
really?
I see it.
Sounds pretty successful to me.
It is a means and end, the journey. It helps me go into the journey. It all goes back to why did you set up the company? If your intention was to become a unicorn, then yes, every time you raise, then that's success, right? If you're planned to become famous and speak on stage, then probably that's success. For us at Fintech Galaxy, we love to impact the community around us. And when we launched, for example, the Central Innovation Hub for the Central Bank of Bahrain, and we managed to broker some innovations that actually changed the way we do retail banking or we do capital markets. We worked with ESCA, we worked with the Egyptian regulator, the central bank, and we actually managed to support fintechs to launch and to raise funds and to do a lot of things. That for me is something that makes me, melt. This is success for me. Raising and becoming a millionaire or billionaire, that's a byproduct, which is amazing. I'm not downplaying that, but if you focus on the mission, because remember, the emotional roller coaster that you go through is incredible. It can break you down. And the only thing that keeps you waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to fight and I'm going to continue going through this journey is the underlying purpose. Yeah? So the purpose has to stand at all times.
I love it. It's beautiful, man. It touched me because actually, at the end of the day, it's all about impact, right? It's all about impact. I love it. It's beautiful. Thank you. Tariq, what about you? Your most significant success. I don't think you can top that.
No, I was just going to say, Myrna really hammered the point there. I'll give it a different perspective, probably something that everyone can also resonate with, apart from solving for customers and for partners. I think one of the biggest successes I've seen is our team. And over the years, how you build a team that shares this passion with you, that is able to get up in the middle of the night and solve problems or work really late, but also have fun doing it, and who get obsessed by solving things. I think it's very interesting because it is a community. Your customers are your community. Your partners become part of that community. But your people are really core. And having those people with you side by side every day, when you hit a bottom and you can't promise a massive exit, or when you're at the top and everyone's celebrating, that roller coaster ride, sharing that with people is really important.
Amazing.
Yeah. By the way, speaking about your team, sometimes you get your biggest backstabbed from your team, and sometimes you get disappointed from your team. Like, it's not really rosy as you'd think. Sometimes, you know, when you need them most, you don't find them. Right?
No, 100%. So it varies a lot. So, but I'm talking about the team think of it as a merry-go-round that you start spinning really, really fast. The ones who hold on, those are your best team members.
Very interesting. As the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, hell is other people. I want to just do one more question before I go into questions from the audience. I think the audience may have some questions. The lady from DFSA, is she still here? What's your name? Sorry? Vandana, okay. So, no. This is important. This is a good opportunity for both of you guys, all of you guys. If there was one thing that you can get the regulator to do, imagine I'm a genie and I'm giving you one wish. You could get the regulator to do one thing, change one thing, enact one thing only, right? What would it be? Be brief, and Vandana, please listen to these guys. Go for it. Tarek, you go first. Just one thing.
It's, again, nothing directly pointed towards the DFSA, but I think it's relevant coming from going towards the DFSA. We obviously operate in this region, and we have a multitude of different things we need to comply with from the DFSA and the central bank, and then SAMA. If I had one wish, it would be that we'd have one regulator in this region.
Are you taking notes?
It's extremely utopian,
Okay,
but
good. This is your homework, Vandana. This is your homework, right? I'm going to check up on this in a month from now. Yeah? Myrna, what about you?
That's a dream that will never come true, by the way. So
hey, we can start working on it, right? Because in Europe, there's one regulator that covers, like, what, 20 markets? So it's not a dream. It's
15 years ago, when I was a journalist, I wrote about this. It never happened.
Look up MiFID. Yeah, okay, go for it.
See, I'll tell you something from our side. Every 6 months in a sandbox environment cost us an average of $2 million. So my ask to regulators, be empathetic. I mean, we are struggling here. So just don't take your sweet time to study cases and give us, you know, approvals and all of that. If you can move faster, that would be nice.
Move faster, yeah? And cost less. Could you do buy now, pay later for regulatory fees? That would be a quite interesting business. Ola? One thing. I know what you're going to say, but go for it.
I mean, there's several. I think regulation doesn't have to be perfect. The reality is the market is there, the technology is being adopted, the market is growing, whether the regulators are there to regulate it or not. So having something out there as guidelines is better than nothing for the actual good players that are building true companies that are trying to serve that market. So regulation doesn't have to be perfect. Time is important. How quickly an industry can be supervised, you know, not sort of, let's say, fully regulated, but at least supervised, is important for the companies that are trying to legitimately serve the market. And with that, you cut down on illicit activities and illegitimate activities. You create a space for good players to actually grow.
Okay.
So yeah, don't optimize for perfection.
Vandana, you got that? Yeah? Last one. Craig, go for it.
Yeah,
one ask of the regulator. You got DFSA in the room, man. That's a legit regulator.
Well, I'm regulated by them, so yeah.
Good.
I know. I think just building on something Tarek said, whilst you may not get one regulator, reciprocity across regulators is probably a more kind of reasonable ambition. If you can get some form of reciprocity, that if you're already licensed by one regulator, you're given the ability to operate in that market under the same operating model, even for a period of time. So it's almost above a sandbox, but maybe below the full regulation.
Maybe passporting.
Yeah, passporting. So you've got the speed to go to market. That's really the key, because...
You know, Europe has this. Passporting happens in Europe, right? Why can't we have passporting in GCC? Like, what's the obstacle? Any idea? You must know the answer, Vandana. No? Sorry, I'm picking on you because you're the only regulator in the room, but like I wish some of your colleagues were here because this is a very important discussion. Yeah. Okay, great.
But Anish, let me just say something. Okay, the regulators have been for the. I'm playing the devil's advocate here.
Do it.
Regulators have been for the past 50 years doing monetary policy and fiscal policies, and suddenly these new creatures come in to actually force them to think about something that they've never even thought of. Imagine somebody asking us to do a fiscal policy for a country. It's going to take us at least 3 years to get our head around it, right?
No, that's not what you should say.
No, I'm being sympathetic here because I want them to shorten the sandbox period.
So, and it also just starts with basic things. So we're all in the fintech world, which we have a ton of regulation and governance we have to abide to. But what about a company working across border, basic licenses? You can't use your UAE license to operate in Saudi. You can't open a Saudi bank account. You can't do payments there. It's just the basic things are not even sorted out. So that's also a starting point, you know, before we get into very complex regulations around crypto or lending, etc.
It's basically ease of doing business for fintech companies. I think that does not exist in the region.
Yeah. Okay, there's about just over 5 minutes left. I would really love to take some questions from the audience. Anyone has any questions? Yes, gentleman over here. What's your name? Sorry? Shahad. From Bangladesh. Which company do you work for? Okay, great. Go for it.
Okay. Yes. So my question is for Craig. You said okay, you are doing this SME lending and you focused on profitability. Can you tell us the story of how you got the customers and how you scaled to get to that profitability?
In 1 minute.
So I think it's really focused on a number of things. One, you've got to try to reduce your cost of acquisition. You need a certain amount of scale, right? You need to do a certain amount of revenue. Then it's about lowering that cost of acquisition and continuing trying to improve your operational processes. For us, the onboarding, credit, collections. So what we look to do is work either with distribution channels who already have reach into quite a large SME community, or we would be working with banks who have a balance sheet and a desire to put money out into the market, but they were just operationally inefficient. So they were very keen to work with us to see if we could really reduce that cost of acquisition. But a lot of it just comes down to managing your costs, being very focused, because I think one of the challenges you have as an entrepreneur is, if you've come up with the idea in the first place, you don't stop having ideas. You keep coming up with ideas all the time, and it's so tempting to say, let's do this, and let's do this, and we could go into this market, and we can go and do this. And each one of those has a cost, not just financially, but also in terms of the time it takes. So a lot of it was about coming back to focus. What do we do? Stick to our knitting. This is what we do. We're not going to launch this. We're not going to launch that.
How many customers did you need to get to that profitability?
We needed about 500 a year.
500 customers a year.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Gentleman behind you, yes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Deepak Ahuja. I run a go-to-market accelerator along with Dubai government. So I don't have a question for you. In fact, I have a ask. You are a great example of success stories in fintech space. How much time can you give for new fintech companies that we are bringing into this country to help them grow?
I would suggest you speak to them straight after this panel.
All right.
Yeah. Anyone else got any questions? Yes, gentleman over here at the front.
Rather than larger markets in the GCC? Was there anything in particular that attracted you?
You mean why have you set up in Dubai and not Riyadh? That's what you're asking, right? Okay, cool. Go for it. Good question.
For us, it was, I started on this journey back in 2013. Nobody was talking about fintech in 2013. Everybody was talking about Kareem, right? And those kind of things, and souk.com. So fintech wasn't even a term that was used then. And we launched at the end of 2014. Regulation didn't come in until February, March 2017. So we operated a couple of years before regulation even happened. So I think it was more to do with just this market seemed the most amenable to be able to set something up and take a bit of a risk.
I echo the same thing, actually. And even if I do that choice now, I'll still pick setting up here in the UAE. I would say particularly Dubai as well, now that obviously Varda is here. I think also compared to other markets, UAE, typically it's easier to hire versus others. You've got a multicultural, diverse, from a talent perspective, nationalities perspective, obviously compared to other parts of the GCC, Dubai has a thriving expat community. There's so many other reasons as well, but in terms of like investors as well, VCs, events, the community exists here. Obviously, there's a thriving crypto community as well. There are many reasons, but I think the choice would still be UAE. Yeah.
Do you guys want to take that?
See, there's a lot of funding in Saudi Arabia. We can't deny that. And there's a lot of business opportunities as well, given the sheer size of the market. But nothing beats the lifestyle that Dubai offers, especially for families, and especially like my colleague is here. He came from London all the way, and he didn't even think twice, okay, coming all the way to Dubai. It's good for families. It's good for, setting up. Even from a business perspective, it's easy. The tax-free. You don't think about a lot of things. There's no restriction on nationalities. Even now, when we're applying for a license at the Central Bank of the UAE for open banking license, I can do it from a free zone, right? So I don't need to actually worry about being mainland and whatever. So they do a lot to make it easier for you.
Would you like to take that? I just resonate a lot with Craig's point. I don't think there was much that was happening for us in Saudi at the time in 2018. It's evolving super fast. So if you asked me in 2019 or 2020, I would have given you a different answer. And then the cashless economy has changed drastically. So for us, there was a big issue around cash in Saudi in 2019. Everyone used cash. 80% of online payments, e-commerce was cash. Today, it flipped over, and that was because of the pandemic and because of other factors. But yeah.
Do I have any questions, any more questions for these wonderful panelists? I can probably take one more. One more? The dude at the back who's really, really keen to ask a question. The guy with the glasses, yeah. Sorry, man, but he was like more desperate than you, so. Yeah. Go. It's better be good, man. Go for it.
Hi, this is Masood Rana. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Revorium. I used to live in Vilnius, but I came all the way from Bangladesh. My company is a fintech, actually.
Get to the question. Just get to the question, yeah. Because we're running out of time.
Basically, we have to run with the different countries like UK, USA, Estonia, Lithuania, and different countries. We have to deal with the different regulatory frameworks. So I have a question to Ola, like, how do you manage, since you are operating from here, but your customer from all over the world, am I right? So how do you manage your licensing stuff? And also, like, we are, like, for my situation right now is I'm a little bit confused, like where I should apply for my license, whether I should be set up in Dubai or in UK or US or Lithuania. I'm a little bit confused. So
Got it. Where should you set up?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. Every company has different set of licenses. Those licenses allow you to do different things. So there isn't like sort of one rule that would apply to all activities or companies. I think when we first sort of started out, like luckily we had a great legal advisor who actually has continued to work with us across the years. And now we have a fantastic public policy team. They take care of these things day in and day out. But in our case, in the region, like VARDA licenses and CBB licenses allow cross-border acquisition of customers. And obviously you'll have to check the other jurisdiction if that type of activity is also allowed. So you have to be mindful of these things. I mean, if a license does not allow you to do cross-border acquisition, obviously, probably shouldn't do it. But I think getting a great legal advisor can help you navigate all those parts.
Fabulous. Ladies and gents, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. That was a very quick 40 minutes, right? Great discussion. Thank you. Please give a round of applause to our amazing panelists. And thanks, everyone, for joining.